Good morning, everyone. My name is Dan Alley. I'm with AirTech Northwest. We're the local distributors for Donaldson dust collection equipment, and we're the authorized dealer for Boss safety products for fire and explosion. I'm going to start out by introducing you to the components of the dust collection system. Then we'll work our way through the safety components, and then we'll just have a brief chat about what you need to be aware of for the daily operations for the dust collection system. So we'll start at the beginning. You'll notice that all of the equipment has a duct connection above it. All the ducts go into a central duct system. Go through the wall here and you'll see that DC1, that's our dust collector for this system. It's called a cyclone. The reason why they call it a cyclone is the air comes into it at a high speed at an angle, spins around. The centrifugal action of the air throws the heavy particles of dust out of the airstream, and it drops them in those two drums that you can see at the bottom. Very simple products, been around for decades and decades, very reliable. So if we work our way through the ducting system, you see that it's a complete system. It's got connections to all the woodworking equipment. Work our way in here. If you can get a shot up from, just so we can point out the components here. There's your cyclone. You've got a panel up there that says "Don't Step on Me" by Fike. That's meant to pop out if there's ever an overpressure situation, some kind of incident where the combustible dust ignites and causes overpressure inside of it. That's meant to relieve that overpressure. So the dusty air comes in, spins around, it deposits the heavy particles of dust, and most of the light ones too, inside of these drums. So that's the inlet. This is the outlet from the cyclone. The cyclone outlet connects to that plenum up here, and you see it ends with these bags. Each of these bags are made out of 16-ounce polyester. The intent of the bag is to separate the very fine dust that got out of the cyclone from the air and exhaust it back into the room. The air from this will be slightly warmer than when it went in, just due to the physics of the fan. So periodically, and depending on how much woodworking you guys are doing in a given day, I recommend coming in here and hitting these sacks to shake or strike the excess dust that's on the surface of the filter off. I recommend a broomstick. It's a wood shop. I'm sure you guys will have a dowel of some sort specifically for this purpose. So when you're doing that, you'll want to bring in a garbage can, and you'll see that we've got a zipper at the bottom of the bag. Should be a zipper pull here as well. There it is. So the first time is always the hardest. Hopefully holding it in the can when you're doing it. Unzip the bag. Now, of course, if you get really excited about this, you're going to have a room full of dust. So just methodically, slowly get this done, get the dust out of there so you raise the smallest cloud possible. It's going to get a little dusty, but you can keep that to a minimum just by slowing it down a little bit and being gentle with it.
Compared to emptying the chip collectors, how often do you empty the bags?
That is going to be, the bags, I'd want to look at them at least once a week. All of these things depend on your workload as opposed to your time. So, you know, if you're doing study units and there's just a little bit of woodwork going on, you don't need to pay or you won't have to empty it as often. Now, if you're running a planer or a shaper or grinding, that sort of thing, these drums will fill up more frequently. A symptom of letting your drums go too long before you empty them is that you'll find more quantities of larger particles inside of here. So general system performance for this cyclone depends on your being mindful of these bags and getting them clean. During the heavy use, maybe once a day.
Does the vacuum gauge out here give it a sign to?
It doesn't give you the condition of these filter bags. This is a touch and feel kind of thing. You'll know that you've gone way over on maintaining it if you're starting to get less airflow out to the equipment on the shop floor. Basic components: cyclone, fan up there on the top, filter bags, waste containers. You see the waste containers have got a clamp. You'll loosen the clamps. You'll know they're loose enough when the clamping mechanism slips out. Those are all loose. There's a rubber seal in here that keeps this airtight. Maybe on a quarterly basis, just reach in here and make sure that those gaskets haven't been torn and damaged while people are changing the drums. When the drum is empty, push the lid down. Tighten those clamps up. You don't have to put a lot of torque on the clamp because what you're doing is you're compressing a gasket rather than doing a metal-to-metal seal. So those are your basics. Be mindful of the drum level, be mindful of the condition of the bags, and you'll have the best performance you can get out of this type of system.
What's the lifespan on the gasket?
This gasket here, if you treat them right, years and years, 3-4 years at least.
Is it possible to put a dolly underneath those permanently so that you can wheel those out a little easier?
Yes, you'll notice that you've got a little bit of flexibility there, but not a lot. It would depend on the dolly. I think I would recommend just using a hand truck for this because you don't have a lot. You could give it a try depending if you had a very low profile dolly, you might be able to get one of those to work. You're welcome. Okay, so basic operations. Anyone have any questions about the dust collection equipment itself? Then we're ready to move on to the safety features. I brought one of those out. We were talking about the explosion relief panel there. If there's overpressure inside of this system, that'll pop out, relieving some of the force of the explosion. Now if we move...
Consumable?
Yes. Now if we're moving our way back out into the shop area here, we can look at the other safety components.
You can't lift those garbage cans, those cans up to a roller to figure.
Well, we were just discussing that, and I'm recommending just getting them out with a hand truck, but if you had a very low profile dolly, we don't have a lot of play up here.
You can make a roller to go on those things. Put underneath it, you roll them out when we're done, take them outside and dump them.
Yeah, the guys who do trolleys and stuff like that should have a solution for you there.
We might have a rolling for a dumpster. Justin, do we have rolling, still the old rolling rates for those things?
One thing to point out is that you want to use steel drums because there is a fairly high negative pressure inside there.
A couple handles on those, maybe? Picking them up.
Sure. Taking care of the ergonomics of handling these drums is an important task, and you guys can work that out. All right, we'll move out to the equipment on the floor here. So, we're just thinking of the combustible nature of the dust. It is possible that you could have an explosion inside of the cyclone dust collector relating to the explosion relief panel we discussed earlier. In the event that there is an explosion inside of the cyclone, we do not want the fireball, the expanding gases of the explosion, to come back through the ductwork out into the individual drops on the floor. The way we prevent that is with what we call an NRV, no return valve. The industry name for this type of equipment is a backblast damper. A backblast meaning the air reversing from the explosion going through the duct system. The air is going the wrong way. We don't want that to happen. So essentially what the backblast damper is a large check valve. It's got a flapper in there, a heavily built flapping lid, and when the airflow is going the correct direction to the dust collector, the airflow makes it open, so it's flow activated. Now, if the airflow reverses and starts going back to the backblast gate, it shuts. So the explosion propagating through the ductwork stops there. It's built to handle the explosion, and it has been tested and certified for the type of application we're working with here. There are 2 monitoring systems on the backblast damper. One of them is to tell you that there's actually been an incident where the gate was activated. Now, if we move around to the other side here, you'll see that you have a counterweighted arm that gives the flap, the check portion of the valve, that gives it some buoyancy so that it can move readily with your airflow. You see that T-handle on the mechanism that the counterweight is connected to. What happens when it activates, the gate slams shut, is there's a latch there. And the T-handle is a pull to release the latch. So until this, whatever caused it to activate is resolved, we don't want it opening on its own. So if it's closed, you get an alarm at the control panel for the gate. We'll look at that in a moment. You get the alarm here. It says, hey, there was an incident. There's a red light on the panel. You know that you need to get up there after you've investigated to make sure what exactly happened. That's the latching mechanism. Now, the other sensor on there is a safe condition monitor. It's a proximity sensor that's placed in the right position to detect if there's dust building up inside of the valve that would impinge on the flapper shutting. If the flapper doesn't shut all the way, the pressurized gas from the collector will get around it. So that's placed there to detect dust buildup. If you get dust buildup, you'll get an alarm at the panel. And there'll be an indication of whether it was the latching mechanism or the proximity sensor. So that's what the device does. Let's go take a look at the control panel so you get an indication of what you're looking for under normal situations.
If there is dust buildup that alarms it, what's the solution?
Good question. There's a panel on the top of the valve itself. It's got I believe they're 3/8-inch nuts. So you get up there with a cordless impact gun, zip them all off, get in there, clean it out, put it back on, and make sure all those nuts get back on.
What's the symptom of not cleaning?
It's a symptom of lower airflow. So yes, exactly. If your airflow through the collector is low due to the filters being blocked up or something like that, your airflow in the system will slow down. If the airflow is slower, then more of the particulate that's suspended in the airflow will drop out. And the backblast damper is one of the places where that would occur. So yes, it is symptomatic of low airflow through the collector.
What's the airspeed you think on this?
Airspeed for combustible dust is 4,000 feet per minute or greater, which should be sufficient to keep anything that you generate out here airborne and headed to the collector. Once you start getting down below 3,500 feet per minute, say 3,000, then you are going to see some of the larger chips, say from the planer or shaper, starting to drop out in the airstream.
So this is operating at over 4,000?
The total CFM for the system, which is the air volume, is about 3,000 CFM. The duct is sized so that the air velocity of what's traveling through it, that 3,000 CFM, is 4,000 feet per minute or greater. So we've got, you're out here, or I should say you're doing something else, and you get a call from the shop teacher that he's got an alarm sounding in the dust collector room. You walk in, you see the panel that is monitoring that no return valve or the backblast damper, and you got 2 things that could have occurred. So if we come around the corner here, you guys that way, camera this way. Self-explanatory, system fault. You can open the panel and push a silence alarm button in there, and that'll silence it for, I believe it's a minute. Silence that. Visually you can check to see if that gate is latched. Or the proximity sensor. There's an indicator in here to give you what the fault is, and that'll tell you whether it's one or the other. So if you get an alarm condition, system fault, green light's off, red light's on. You've either had an incident where the backblast damper was activated, in which case you should be very cautious about taking the lid off. You need to spend some time checking to make sure that there's no smoke coming out of the collector or something like that that would indicate there had been an incident. Barring that activation, then you know that your proximity sensor has been activated by dust buildup, and you just got to schedule some time to get up there and clean it out. It should be considered immediate action. Otherwise, you would shut the system down because you know that an important part of the safety system isn't in good working order. So that's your backblast damper. We have a second safety system on this collection system that's a detect and extinguish. Detect and extinguish, we've got a sensor to see a spark or a light or whatever happens to generate light inside of a very dark duct comes by. It detects that, and in a blink of an eye, essentially, it activates a quick pulse from a sprinkler that's also inside the ductwork. The idea of the timing is that spark comes by, it's been detected, sprinkler turns on when it's going towards the collector. And that device is up here. Hate to move you around so much. So you've got your detector, which is the small red box up there. You can call it the activator because it's what actually starts the sprinkler system. It sees a light source moving through the duct. It's at the proper distance from each other with that 400-foot velocity that we discussed earlier for the sprinkler to intercept that spark. If you want to get technical, you call it an ignition source. It detects that, and you get a burst of water in there. Now, you're not going to see water all over the floor. You may have a drip coming from one part of the duct or the other. Where you will see water from the sprinkler is inside the drum. So if you look in there and you notice that the chips, the dust is wet, then you know you've had the sprinkler go off. You'll also get a message on the sprinkler control panel, which is the larger of the two red control panels in there. That will tell you I had a fault and it was a sprinkler activation.
Are these monitored online?
Yeah. Monitored online?
I am the fire alarm, monitored by point monitor,
It is tight, okay.
or iWatch, sorry, monitored by iWatch.
So do we have any questions about the backblast damper?
Fire alarm will go off when that happens?
Is it considered a trouble or an alarm? I believe it's considered a trouble.
And it appears that it's one data point, so I think whatever triggers panel just sees trouble.
So what about if it goes off, you have to go inside there and clean all that? Isn't it going to make a nasty mess in there with water and...
It's not enough water to give you a drum full of wet chips. You will have some water inside of the duct. After you've noticed that there's an incident, take the proper precautions to make sure that there isn't a fire in the system. Then, of course, the building fire system will be involved in that. Once you're certain that you don't have active flame inside of the collector, open it up. You look at the dust in there. Yep, it's wet. We have the sprinkler go off. You might have a drip out of one of the flanges dropping on the floor. As far as cleanup, the dust itself, the air inside the duct will dry out fairly quickly. I wouldn't consider getting the moist sawdust out of any portion of that duct done immediately unless it was blocked with wet dust.
You can access it that way then? Inside?
You have to break a flange there in order to get inside the duct. That would be the best place to do a vigil in there. You can also look down the duct through the backblast damper itself.
So if you get a fire alarm on this thing going off in ductwork and you see water inside, how are we supposed to inspect to make sure that fire is not in there still going?
I would contact the fire department in cases like that. Back me up.
Our protocol that we actually figured out in our release for management committee is that we don't pass anything. We call the fire department regardless if it's a fire incident. We have them check it out first, and then we come in and repair.
So we'll call.
Right.
We'll offset one something.
Right. So fire department, then maintenance department.
My shop, so to be clear, we get a spark alarm. Something happens, the office calls the fire department, or I call the office
It goes
and
off
tell them?
alarm goes off when you're
No, that's trouble.
That's it.
That's trouble only. So he needs to call and confirm what happened and have the office call 911, get the fire department out here checked out.
We still have to evacuate the building to pull the fire alarm.
I would check with your principal, but maintenance has been told that we can't come in after fire unless the fire department's cleared it that it's safe for us to go in. Even if it's an attic up at Benson, caught fire from the motor, I came in and I'm like, well, has this even been cleared? Do I know that this is even safe? So we need to have the fire department take a look before we're allowed to work on spaces.
So work out with the admin how they want to handle it?
Exactly. Double check the protocol there. That's how it works.
Does the dust collection system shut off automatically if the spark is sensed?
It does not to my knowledge. We check with the installing electrical contractor. I'm not aware of that.
But a good procedure would be that if it's going into trouble,
Yes.
you should shut the system off and not fire it back up until you have the all clear from maintenance, basically.
Yes.
Activate a whole series of procedures.
Right.
So to be clear, the system has got a protocol for any type of incident that generates smoke or flame, and you will follow that procedure.
And even a tiny ignition source counts as flame in this case?
Well, if it trips the spark detector, then you would go into your protocol for any type of fire incident.
So that will notify, like you said, if I heard this right, if it trips, it notifies iWatch
There's a trouble.
of trouble.
Trouble isn't an emergency. Trouble is just check this out.
Okay, and they're going to notify, that automatically goes downtown then, on the computer, the trouble.
No, trouble will come into our shop.
It will?
Yeah, it'll come
So
to
you'll see it, you'll
We'll see it
contact,
first, yeah.
you'll contact
We'll
us,
start,
let us know.
we'll start making calls. Troubles we don't roll trucks on the trouble. That's the way that's set up.
So when we get a trouble on this system, you're going to contact us. And
They're gonna call the electrical shop first, and then we're gonna start figuring out what's going on. We're gonna probably start calling you first. Okay, what's going on out there?
So,
I don't want to get in the way of the labor management agreement, but how long will you shut down if you get a spark?
Tell me out here, check it out.
this is the T-trash.
Yeah, I'm sure. Sorry. Yeah, we gotta go out here and check it out, so whatever that, we'll kind of develop a procedure for that, but.
And at a minimum, you should probably have, like what we would do in construction, is have like a fire watch. So spark goes off, trouble alarm goes off, you shut the system down, and you basically have, somebody, custodian or somebody, on fire watch until you guys clear it, or whatever procedure gets worked out, right?
Well, I heard 911.
That needs to be confirmed to the principal for the procedure for how to handle trouble event with.
Once you go 911, we'll go backwards.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. We need to go through the principal and develop that. But as a minimum, I would recommend that the procedure be that until the electrical shop clears the trouble, if it's in the fire detection system, you maintain some type of fire watch presence.
Right, but the agreement is you guys don't do the troubleshooting 911. So it sounds to me, unless we get a change in that, every time we get a spark in the system, we evacuate the school. That might be a problem.
Yeah, we might have to revisit the procedure and see if that's really effective or not.
In a shop like this,
How often do you have a spark?
I
I wouldn't think this would be often, right? So-
No, what you're typically with a fire caused by a saw or some other type of high-speed milling equipment, you've got a nail in some recycled lumber, or somebody drops a tool and it gets jammed into whatever friction-generating part of the equipment, throwing sparks into the system. So,
We get a sting to realize that you can get out of the box because
yes, that's true.
When in doubt, we're gonna evacuate the school. Yeah. Keep it close, we're just gonna say, pull close and get out of there. And
Well,
we'd rather err on the side of caution.
the thing to remember is The detect and extinguish system is a fire prevention system rather than a firefighting system. So the whole object is to prevent the dust collector from, ignition sources from getting to the dust collector. If it functions properly, you're gonna get some water on the floor, and of course you'll have to see, you want to see exactly where the sparks are coming from because you want to stop that from happening again.
So, put my spill on what you guys are talking about. If it goes into trouble, who's ever in this room is considered a fire alarm person. If there's an active fire, when you pull that pull station to evacuate the building. If you not evacuate the building, it's a problem. Okay.
Any other questions for Dan before we have our next training?
Yellow light on top comes on when you have that scenario, correct? Right above you there on the wall, is that what that is?
I don't know the answer to that question.
So my question is, if that is going to be an alarm indicator, that we have that phenolic sign so we know what that's for?
We'll get that, yeah, we'll get that started.
We'll get signs on both those.
Yes.
Leave it out there.
And I'm assuming right next to it's some kind of noisemaker?
Yeah.
Okay.
And how much dust can that room handle with all the electrical and stuff in there, those doors shut? Is there dust do any damage in there, or? There's a lot of dust, but those bags where it's open, you cover them with dust.
That's a possibility. They're unlikely to burst. The biggest source of dust you're going to have is two things. Those filters are efficient, but no filter is 100% efficient. So the very smallest particles, say those that are the size of a human hair or smaller, a certain percentage of those is going to come out, is going to pass through the bags. So they're 99.9% efficient at a particular particle size. They're less efficient when they get smaller. So there is going to be a small amount of airborne dust coming out of or bypassing the filters over time. And that'll be a housekeeping matter. All of the electronics in there are dust tight. In the event that you do have a bag fail, it's unlikely, but in the event that you do have one fail, it will be a mess in there.
And that room is unvented, right?
I'm not familiar with the ventilation for that room.
But someone figured out that all the pressure coming out of those bags is a way to balance
Huge
out.
grill over here on their side.
There's a register.
Oh, it is? Okay.
Yeah. And there's also,
And then you have the bank right here in the top. So there is like a plastic vent that goes out to the roof.
yeah, there's a backdraft damper up there.
Yep, there it is. Sir? I'm Dan.
Dan, so Dan, on the fire system, I don't know if this is possible or not. We talked about troubles and anything like that. Is it possible you can make that thing go on trouble so we can see what it does?
Sorry,
Yeah, we can.
And you make it go into trouble right now to see what it does. And call iWatch or whoever is telling you doing a test right now.
It's physically possible to test it, yes.
Are we on? Are we in test right now? Yeah, with people working, we should be.
No, we're live. I'll make a phone call.
Well, actually, you know what? Later today, we're doing fire alarm training. We will test it later today.
Yeah, we will do it. We're right from here, we're going to meet in the parking lot as soon as we wrap up here.
Is this online right now? You can turn it on?
Yes.
There you go.
Would you mind?
I don't mind.
Leave button on.
Sorry, before you do, will you just talk through each session?
Oh. Okay, so you've got your main disconnect for the motor starter, for the fan. You want to check to make sure this is in the on position. If anybody's doing any work on the system, of course you're all familiar with lockout, tag out. This would be the point where you would lock out the fan motor. We're in on position now. Get simple start, stop. See,
What do the new emergency stop buttons on the walls do?
the e-stop should shut the fan off.
Can we demonstrate that?
We sure can. System is functional. So you guys got the impression of the noise level. If you want to move air, you got to make some noise. And you saw how the bags inflate. Oh, he killed the power.
So we're now demonstrating what happens when you